Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down two really powerful concepts from our source material. Something called the broken beat, which is described as an external force that can drain your energy, and then the victim virus, which is more of an internal mindset that can sabotage your own freedom. Let's dive in.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to set the stage with this idea of an energetic currency. Then we'll look at this external threat, the so-called broken beat, and, how to build a defense against it. After that, we'll switch gears and examine an internal threat, the victim virus, and finally, we'll wrap it all up by exploring what the source calls the price of freedom. All right, first up, let's really get our heads around the main idea here. The source material suggests that our personal energy, our vitality, it's not just a feeling, it's actually a form of currency.
Yeah, so the material basically poses this question to us. Just imagine for a second that every single interaction you have, every room you walk into, every choice you make, it's either a deposit or a withdrawal from your spiritual bank account. This is the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about.
So, now that we have that foundation in place, let's get into the first major threat to this energetic currency, an external force that's specifically designed to drain it. So this whole concept is introduced to us through a character named Diesel, and you can see from his quote here, he uses really aggressive, jagged music to, as he says, numb out the world. He thinks he's doing something therapeutic, but as you're about to see, he might actually be going energetically bankrupt.
And here's where it gets really fascinating. Look at the total disconnect here. His intention is to relax and de-stress, but the actual effect? The complete opposite. He gets more agitated, his jaw is clenched, he's tense, he's angry. The thing he thinks is medicine is basically acting like a poison.
The source material doesn't just call this bad vibes music. It gives it a very specific and kind of intense name, psychotronic warfare. The idea is that certain rhythms are literally weaponized sound. They're designed to mimic a heart in distress, which in turn messes with our own energy centers and drags our consciousness down into our more basic animal instincts.
So, the real takeaway here is that this isn't just about musical taste. According to the text, this is a system with a purpose. It's meant to drain your energy, stir up negative emotions, and ultimately program you with a mindset of fatalism, this deep-seated belief that the game of life is totally rigged against you, so why even bother trying? Okay, so if you're surrounded by these kinds of external forces, what are you supposed to do? Well, the material doesn't just point out the problem, it actually offers up a solution, a way to build your defenses.
And the principle behind it is really all about energetic self-preservation. It's kind of like what they tell you on an airplane, right? Put on your own oxygen mask first. You can't help anyone else if your own energy is getting totally compromised and sucked dry. And the specific technique they teach in the story is this three-step visualization. It's pretty straightforward. First, you picture this protective cylinder of brilliant white light all around you. Second, you mentally reinforce it with a clear intention to be sealed off from negativity. And third, you actually feel it working. You feel that oppressive energy just hitting the barrier and sliding right off.
Okay, time to pivot. We just talked about an attack that comes from the outside. Now we're going to look at one that comes from the inside. It's a mindset that the source calls the victim virus. And these two things are often linked. When we get drained by external forces, we're way more vulnerable to this kind of internal sabotage.
We're introduced to this whole idea through a different character, Abby, and you can get a sense of her viewpoint from this quote. She sees the system as fundamentally unfair. She feels like she's entitled to things, like an education, and that she shouldn't have to struggle or pay a personal price for them.
So the source defines this as a sort of mental virus. It's this thought pattern that just whispers in your ear that you're too weak, that you can't possibly succeed on your own. And once you start believing that, it makes you willing to trade your personal power, your sovereignty, for a promise of security from some big outside entity like the system.
And this sets up a huge choice, a real fork in the road between what the text calls sovereignty and dependency. The path of sovereignty means you own it all, your struggles, your debts, and your successes. As it says, muscles grow by lifting weight. But the path of dependency is about demanding a free ride, which, according to this material, is like signing a hidden contract that makes you reliant on something else. So, where does this choice actually lead? What are the real consequences? This final section from the source material really digs into the ultimate price you pay for taking one of these two very different paths.
This table really breaks down Abby's choice so clearly. On the surface, she thinks she's getting free money with government loans.
But what the source is arguing is that it's actually a trade. She's swapping a temporary, manageable financial debt for a permanent, spiritual kind of debt, a debt of gratitude and reliance that never really goes away.
And this slide really gets to the heart of it. It highlights this massive distinction the text makes between the temptation of getting free stuff versus achieving what it calls real freedom. And that's defined as the ability to make your own choices, without being controlled or owned by whoever's giving you the free stuff.
This brings us to a really powerful concluding thought from the source material. The idea is, the path of independence and self-reliance, it's harder. The upfront cost, the interest, is high. But the reward, the payoff, is true, untethered freedom. And that pays dividends forever.
And so that's what the material leaves us with. It's a pretty provocative question to think about, right? Taking these ideas out of the story, I'm looking at our own lives. Where are we willing to pay that high interest for real freedom? And where, maybe without even realizing it, might we be signing one of those contracts of dependency? It's definitely something to chew on.